911, what is your emergency?
Fort Wayne police say they have made an arrest in a homicide cold case.
Everybody there, we were all friends.
It was August 2002.
It's just an amazing, amazing feeling.
She was my friend. We were terrible teenage girls, but she was still my friend.
Stacy DeGrandchamp was a week away from starting her senior year at Wayne High School.
It was like a terrible, terrible nightmare that...
She was still my friend.
18 years after the crime.
Hey everyone, James here, and today I'm diving into a case that proves sometimes the most shocking mysteries aren't about what happened, but about why nobody would talk about it. But first, let me show you the place where a crime took place 23 years ago. See that red house? That's where it all began. Back in 2002, this place looked very different. Imagine being at a party with 20 of your friends when something terrible occurs. And then imagine every single person there suddenly developing amnesia that lasts for 17 years. This isn't fiction, folks. This is exactly what happened in Fort Wayne, Indiana. And the story I'm about to tell you will make you question everything you thought you knew about teenage loyalty and the price of keeping secrets. Let me take you back to 2002. Eminem's "Lose Yourself" was dominating the airwaves. Flip phones were the height of technology, and 17-year-old Stacy DeGrandchamp was living her best life. Or at least, she was trying to. Stacy wasn't your typical high school student. She had her whole future mapped out. Ball State University, computer technology career, the works. Growing up as an only child with a single mom, Stacy had learned early on how to command a room. Beautiful, confident, and undeniably popular, she had everything going for her. But you know what they say about being at the top. There's always someone waiting to knock you down. And in Stacy's case, there were plenty of girls sharpening their claws. Now, I need you to understand something about teenage dynamics. When you're 17, your biggest worry should be whether your crush noticed your new haircut, not whether the girl across the cafeteria is plotting your demise. But Stacy's world was about to get a whole lot more complicated when she met Brandon Muff at a house party in the spring of 2002. Brandon was everything parents warn their daughters about. Early 20s, recent high school graduate with no clear direction in life, and the kind of bad boy energy that makes smart girls do stupid things. Can you relate? Have you ever fallen for someone you knew was absolutely wrong for you? Stacy certainly did. And she fell hard. The thing about Brandon's crowd was that it came as a package deal. You couldn't just date Brandon. You had to navigate his entire social circle, which included party girls Amanda Richards and Whitney McGehee. These weren't your honor roll students planning college visits on weekends. No, this crew had a different kind of headquarters, the home of 16-year-old Holly Boisvert. Holly's house was basically teenage paradise. There was a pool, and no one ever seemed to be watching. Her father had this bizarre philosophy where 30 kids could be destroying his property, and he'd just shrug it off. I mean, what parent in their right mind thinks that's a good idea? Holly, Whitney, and Amanda were tight, and they all orbited around Brandon like he was the sun in their dysfunctional solar system. When Stacy entered this world as Brandon's new girlfriend, she probably thought she was just expanding her social circle. What she didn't realize was that she was walking into a minefield of jealousy and unresolved feelings. You see, Holly wasn't just another face in Brandon's crowd. She was his ex-girlfriend. Now, before you roll your eyes and think this is just another petty high school love triangle, let me tell you about the pool incident. Years before any of this drama, back when they were in middle school, Stacy had shown up at one of Holly's famous pool parties. She dipped her feet in the water, probably just trying to cool off on a hot day, when Holly decided to publicly humiliate her about splashing. The entire party laughed. Stacy left. The damage was done. Fast forward to 2002, and these two were supposedly over their middle school beef. Some people even thought they'd become friends. How naive can you be? Holly was watching Stacy parade around with her ex-boyfriend, pretending everything was fine while secretly seething. She genuinely believed she and Brandon would reunite. Instead, she had a front-row seat to watch Stacy living what Holly considered to be her life. The tension between them was like watching a pot of water slowly come to a boil. Holly started spreading rumors about Stacy, trying to turn people against her. Classic mean girl tactics, right? But Stacy wasn't the same insecure 8th grader who ran away from a pool party. She was 17 now, in love, and not about to be pushed around. Here's where things get interesting, though. While Holly was plotting and scheming, Stacy was having her own revelation. As August 2002 rolled around and her senior year approached, she started seeing Brandon and his crowd for what they really were: a dead end. She had dreams, ambitions, a future that didn't involve hanging around Fort Wayne getting wasted at house parties every weekend. So Stacy did what most of us wish we had the courage to do with our toxic relationships. She ended it. Just weeks before school started, she broke up with Brandon and cut ties with his entire crew. Well, almost his entire crew. She kept one friend from that summer, Abby Oswald. Abby was different from the others, or at least Stacy thought she was. They'd met through Brandon, sure, but their friendship seemed genuine. So when August 15th rolled around and Abby needed someone to go dress shopping with for an upcoming dance, Stacy was there. Normal teenage girl stuff, right? They hit the mall, probably tried on a dozen outfits, gossiped about boys who weren't Brandon. But then Abby had a suggestion. There was a party that night at this house on Guthrie Street. Brandon's place, actually, where he lived with his roommate Justin. Stacy's immediate reaction? No way. She was done with that crowd, remember? But Abby was persistent. Really persistent. The kind of persistent that, looking back, seems suspicious, doesn't it? Around 9:30 p.m., Abby and Stacy pulled up to the house. What happened next would become the subject of 17 years of lies, cover-ups, and selective memory loss. The Fort Wayne police had actually already been to that address earlier that evening. Neighbors had complained about the noise. Typical party call. The cops told them to keep it down and left. They should have shut it down completely. If they had, maybe Stacy would still be alive. Just before 11 p.m., police, firefighters, and paramedics raced back to Guthrie Street. This time, it wasn't a noise complaint. They found a teenage girl in the driveway, blood soaking through her shirt, fighting for her life. She was rushed to the trauma center with injuries that would prove fatal. Abby Oswald immediately became the star witness. According to her version of events, when they arrived at the party, Brandon and Holly were sitting on the porch together. Think about that for a second. The ex-boyfriend and his former girlfriend just casually hanging out at the exact moment his most recent ex shows up. Stacy saw Holly and asked what she was doing there. Words were exchanged. Tempers flared. Then it got physical, and I mean really physical. Hair pulling, punching, kicking. These two girls went at each other like their lives depended on it. They rolled around in the grass while party guests watched. Stacy was winning at first, even managing to kick Holly in the head and face. Then something changed. Stacy suddenly seemed to lose all her strength, going limp in the middle of the fight. That's when Brandon decided to play hero. He grabbed Stacy by her ankles and literally dragged her across the yard to the trash cans. Just dragged her like she was nothing. Stacy managed to stand up and stumble down the driveway before collapsing. Brandon went over to check on her, lifted her shirt, and saw that her bra was soaked with blood. Only then did someone think to call 911. The police took Holly and Brandon to the station while forensics processed the scene. They were looking for one thing: a weapon. Stacy had been bleeding from her chest, which meant something sharp had penetrated her skin. But here's the thing: they couldn't find anything. No knives in the backyard, nothing sharp in the driveway. They got a search warrant, went inside the house, and bagged some kitchen knives from a table, but that was it. While detectives were searching for clues, doctors at the hospital were fighting to save Stacy's life. She had 2 stab wounds, one to her upper chest, another to her abdomen. Stacy DeGrandchamp died from her injuries that night. She was 17 years old. Now, when someone gets stabbed to death at a party with 20 witnesses and nobody sees anything, you know something stinks. And I'm not talking about the trash cans that Holly and Brandon kept insisting were full of broken glass. The Fort Wayne police launched a homicide investigation, and what they found was a masterclass in how to obstruct justice without technically breaking the law. Let's start with Holly's story at the police station. She claimed she had nothing to do with Stacy's injuries, just a regular teenage catfight that somehow ended with 2 stab wounds. Her theory? Maybe Stacy fell on some glass in the trash can. But here's the problem. The forensics team photographed every inch of that crime scene. No broken glass in the trash cans. No blood on them or around them. Nothing. Brandon's story was equally ridiculous. He admitted his shirt was soaked with Stacy's blood. Hard to deny when the evidence is literally stuck to you. His explanation? He was just trying to break up the fight by dragging Stacy by her ankles. He claimed he didn't realize how hard he was pulling her, and maybe she got hurt when she fell into those mysterious glass shards that didn't exist. The coroner's report was crystal clear. These were stab wounds caused by a knife with a sharp blade, not glass cuts, not accidental injuries, deliberate stab wounds. But without a murder weapon or witnesses willing to talk, the police had to let Holly and Brandon walk. 4 days later, on August 19, 2002, they buried Stacy DeGrandchamp. They dressed her in the prom clothes she was supposed to wear for her senior photos. Think about that for a second. A 17-year-old girl buried in her prom dress because she'd never get to wear it to the actual prom. The funeral was packed. Abby, Whitney, Amanda, all the party crowd showed up. You know who didn't show? Holly Boisvert. But Brandon? Oh, Brandon had the audacity to walk into that funeral home. Every eye in the room turned to him. The nerve of this guy, showing up to the funeral of the girl who died at his house, in a fight he allegedly tried to stop. The whispers started immediately, and they didn't stop when school started. Fort Wayne High School became a rumor mill. The prevailing theory? Brandon and his friends had lured Stacy to that party specifically so Holly could hurt her. It wasn't just teenage gossip. Even the detectives started wondering if this was a conspiracy. Nobody wanted to hang out with Holly anymore. She'd become a pariah. Everyone believed she'd killed Stacy. They just couldn't prove it. Then another piece of the puzzle emerged. Whitney McGeehee, remember her? One of the party girls from Brandon's crew? Turns out she'd left a voicemail on Stacy's answering machine just days before her death, warning her to be careful. When detectives showed up at Whitney's door, she had an interesting explanation. She claimed it wasn't a threat. It was a genuine warning. Whitney knew Holly wanted to fight Stacy, and she was trying to keep them apart. But here's where it gets really twisted. On the same day of the party, August 15th, Brandon called Holly's house with an ultimatum. If you don't come to this party, I will never speak to you again. So while Whitney was trying to keep these girls apart, Brandon was actively ensuring they'd both be there. Starting to see the pattern? Think about Brandon's motivation for a second. Stacy had just dumped him. For a guy with an ego like his, that had to sting. Was this his revenge? Get his ex and his former girlfriend in the same place, knowing they hated each other, knowing there'd be a confrontation? Holly's jealousy plus Brandon's wounded pride equals one dead teenager. But we can't forget about Abby Oswald, can we? Sweet, innocent Abby, who just wanted to go prom dress shopping with her new friend. Except Abby was the one who insisted Stacy go to that party. She knew Brandon would be there. She probably knew Holly would be there. Yet she pushed and pushed until Stacy agreed to go. When detectives questioned her about being part of a plan to lure Stacy there, she denied everything, even claimed she tried to stop the fight. Convenient. The investigation needed a break, and it came from an unexpected source, Justin, Brandon's roommate. On August 26th, Justin gave a statement that should have broken the case wide open. According to him, he tried to break up the fight between Stacy and Holly, but Brandon physically pushed him away and said, "No, let them fight." Brandon was enjoying it. He wanted to watch these two girls tear each other apart. But wait, it gets worse. After Stacy died, Brandon asked Justin to lie to the police. He wanted Justin to say that Holly didn't do anything and that Stacy just fell. That's witness tampering, obstruction of justice. Take your pick of charges. But Justin only came forward with this information after the fact, and Brandon wasn't talking. When detectives brought Brandon in for a second interview, he shut down completely. His response? "I'm not a snitch." He claimed he never saw Holly with a knife. The code of the streets had apparently made its way to suburban Fort Wayne house parties. 20 people at that party, and suddenly everyone had developed a case of selective blindness. The detectives were certain Holly had committed the crime. They just needed one witness, just one, to tell the truth about what they saw that night. But nobody would talk. These weren't hardened criminals protecting each other. These were middle-class teenagers and 20-somethings from Fort Wayne, Indiana. Yet they maintained a code of silence that would make the mafia proud. Weeks turned into months. Months turned into years. The case went cold. Stacy's file got moved to the unsolved cases unit, where it sat collecting dust. 1 year passed, then 5, then 10, then 15. Stacy's mom had to wake up every day knowing her daughter's killer was walking free. Holly moved on with her life. Brandon moved on with his. Everyone just moved on. Except for one person who refused to let it go. Jamie McMillan, Stacy's cousin, couldn't accept that her cousin's killer would never face justice. For 17 years, Jamie kept pushing, kept asking questions, kept Stacy's memory alive.
It was like a terrible, terrible nightmare that you're just like, no, don't wake me up and tell me that.
And in March 2019, she made the phone call that would change everything. Jamie reached out to Detective Brian Martin from the Unsolved Cases Unit. She had a simple request. Talk to them again. Brandon, Holly, Abby, Amanda. They're all in their 30s now. They have kids of their own. Maybe time has given them perspective. Maybe guilt has been eating at them. Maybe someone would finally tell the truth. Detective Martin agreed to reopen the case. His first stop? Abby Oswald, 17 years later, and her story hadn't changed one bit. Never saw a knife, didn't know anything, same old song and dance. Next up was Brandon Muff. Now this was interesting. Brandon seemed different, older, obviously, but also worn down. He appeared genuinely remorseful, like he'd been carrying this burden for 17 years. The detective could see it weighing on him, but when push came to shove, when it was time to tell the truth about what he saw that night, Brandon still claimed he never saw Holly with a knife. 17 years, and he was still protecting her, or protecting himself. About a month after these disappointing interviews, Detective Martin got his biggest break. He'd tracked down Holly Boisvert to Wisconsin. When he knocked on her door, she took forever to answer, and when she finally opened it, and he introduced himself as a Fort Wayne detective working on an unsolved case, her face went pale. She knew. Before he even said Stacy's name, she knew exactly why he was there. What happened next was a masterclass in manipulation and selective memory. Holly invited him in and started talking about that night like she was the victim.
She was my friend. We were terrible teenage girls, but she was still my friend. She was still my friend.
My friend? The girl she'd tormented since middle school? The girl who dated her ex? The girl who ended up dead after their fight? But here's where Holly got sloppy. She kept saying things like, "I would never intentionally stab my friend, and I would never intentionally raise a knife on her." Intentionally. That word doing a lot of heavy lifting. Not, "I didn't stab her." Not, "I didn't have a knife." Just that she wouldn't do it intentionally. Then came the moment that changed everything. Holly admitted she used to carry a folding knife for protection back in 2002. Lots of young women do. That's not unusual. But when Detective Martin asked if she had that knife with her the night of the fight, Holly did something that defied all logic. She got up, went to her bedroom, and came back holding the knife. The same knife from 2002. She'd kept it for 17 years. Think about that for a second. If you'd killed someone with a weapon, even accidentally, would you keep it? Would you move it from place to place, state to state, like some kind of twisted memento? Or would you get rid of it immediately? Detective Martin probably had to control his expression. This woman had just handed him what could be the murder weapon that police had been searching for since 2002. He took that knife back to Fort Wayne like he was transporting gold. The DNA tests came back negative, no trace of Stacy's blood. But after 17 years, and who knows how many cleanings, that wasn't surprising. What mattered was what happened next. Dr. Wagner, the chief pathologist, compared the knife to Stacy's autopsy photos. The blade width, the shape, everything about it was consistent with the wounds that killed Stacy. On March 25, 2020, nearly 18 years after Stacy's death, 33-year-old Holly Boisvert was finally arrested for murder. But even with Holly in custody, the case still needed something more. The knife evidence was circumstantial. Holly's suspicious statements weren't a confession, they needed a witness. And that's when the dam finally broke. Amanda Richards, one of the party girls from Brandon's crew, Holly's friend, decided she couldn't carry this secret anymore. Amanda had been in the car with Holly the night of the party, and she'd seen something that she'd kept quiet about for almost 2 decades. According to Amanda, Holly had the knife on her that night. More importantly, Amanda saw Holly pick up that knife and walk toward the house before the fight. Think about what that means. Holly didn't pull out a knife in the heat of the moment during the fight. She armed herself beforehand. She was ready for violence before the first punch was thrown. For 17 years, Amanda Richards knew this. While Stacy's mother grieved, while Jamie McMillan fought for justice, while the case went cold, Amanda kept her mouth shut. She chose loyalty to Holly over justice for Stacy. She chose to protect a killer rather than help a grieving family find closure. With Amanda's testimony, the police could finally piece together the complete picture. Brandon had orchestrated the entire confrontation. He'd called Holly with an ultimatum to ensure she'd be at the party. He'd made sure both his ex-girlfriends would be in the same place. When they started fighting, he told people not to intervene. He wanted to watch them tear each other apart. And when Stacy started winning, when she was getting the better of Holly, that's when Holly reached for her knife. The case was finally ready for prosecution, but here's where it gets frustrating. After consulting with Stacy's family, prosecutors offered Holly a plea deal. After 18 years of denying everything, of letting a family suffer without answers, Holly was offered a deal. But plea deals require admissions of guilt, and for the first time since that night in 2002, Holly Boisvert had to tell the truth. She stood in court and admitted she had stabbed Stacy. She admitted causing her death, though she still insisted Brandon and Abby had nothing to do with it, claiming she acted alone. Right. She just happened to bring a knife to a party where her ex-boyfriend orchestrated a meeting between her and his other ex. Jamie McMillan spoke in court about what the family had endured for 19 years. "I didn't know if we would ever see this day," she said. "Can you imagine? 19 years of knowing who killed your cousin but being unable to prove it. 19 years of watching Holly live her life while Stacy lay in the ground in her prom dress. Think about that. It took a legal document to finally make Holly admit what everyone at that party knew, what Amanda Richards knew, what Brandon knew, what they'd all known for 19 years. On January 14, 2022, Holly was sentenced to 25 years with 5 suspended and 3 years probation. With time served and good behavior, she could be out as early as 2030, less than a decade for taking a life and then hiding the truth for 17 years. So, let me ask you something. Is that justice? Holly goes to prison, sure, but what about Brandon, who orchestrated the whole thing? What about Amanda, who kept silent while a family suffered? What about the other 18 witnesses who chose their friends over the truth? What about Abby, who lured Stacy to that party? Stacy DeGrandchamp would be 41 years old today. She never got to attend Ball State University, never became that computer technologist, never got to wear her prom dress to an actual prom. All because a jealous ex-girlfriend couldn't let go, a manipulative boy wanted to watch a fight, and 20 people decided that keeping secrets was more important than justice. Well, that's all for today's case, and honestly, this one still bothers me every time I think about it. 20 people who could have spoken up but didn't, for 17 years. If this story hit you as hard as it hit me, let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and I'll see you in the next video. Until then, I'm James, and remember, sometimes the truth has a way of coming out, even if it takes way too long.